All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to the first episode of the Sota Arms podcast. I'm your moderator and host, Anthony. Along with me is my good friend, Officer Steve. Today we
Hello.
will be discussing the other ruling of the Supreme Court, not the one everybody else is talking about. So with this ruling coming out, the Supreme Court determined that citizens in the state of New York should be able to carry their firearms, and essentially is trying to strike down the shall or may issue in favor of a shall issue policy. So I guess we'll start there. Steve, love to get your perspectives as a law enforcement officer on your thoughts of that.
Yeah. Well, just like the overall thought of the bill.
Yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah. Honestly, I honestly think it's great. I'm a big Second Amendment dude. I love guns. I love people that have guns if they're eligible for it. Uh, and it's a big thing. When I was in the military, stationed in DC, that was a big thing too, because this bill not only affects New York, it affects a bunch of cities and states that had similar implements of gun restriction,
Yeah,
or those kind of like may issue permit to carry.
yeah. I think there was like 6 other states or something like that that fall under that may issue. I think Hawaii was one. I'm not sure of the other ones, but it is really nice to have a federal ruling.
I think it's great because it's going to make other states that have been having um, these may issue permits really look at their legislation for that state.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's, I think, 6 other states, I think, were included in that. I believe Hawaii was one. And I honestly can't remember the rest of them. But that is really big because, yeah, we now have a federal decision saying that those type of laws infringe on the Second Amendment.
Yep, and it's yeah, I didn't dig too much into the history of like New York and their what initially they had in place for as far as like shall issue permits or like the special issue permits, uh, how that came to be, which is interesting because I'm surprised the state got away with that for so long.
Oh yeah, you essentially created a class of super elite who are allowed to carry guns and nobody else was.
So you had to have like a special job or profession or be in a position where you're like, hey, I need to carry a firearm.
Yeah, like a public
So
official or a public figure, or I think corporate executives could get it pretty easily due to their high financial standing.
mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it essentially created a class where the 1% of the population, I hate to go there, but the 1% of the population was allowed to carry a gun and everybody else was not.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I'm pretty steadfast against class discrimination. I think that's not great.
Yeah, it's just interesting where it I don't know, it's just, oh, okay, so reading up on this law was placed in 1913
Oh wow.
uh, under New York's law, which it required residents to show proper cause to carry a concealed weapon in public for self-defense. um, so wow, 1913,
That's going
this
that's
has been
going
in
back.
place. So interesting, very interesting to see that it just now got up overturned. However, I find it interesting because I don't know how accessible it was to you, uh, but this was right around the decision of Roe v. Wade too, and I didn't see any of this posted in the media.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm going to title this episode the other Supreme Court decision.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's a very certain case that's taking the front center
Mhm.
stage. But I mean, when it boils down to it, the Second Amendment is our right that allows us to protect all of our other rights. So
Yep.
really, any court decision made doesn't matter if we don't have the Second Amendment.
Oh yeah.
Oh. All right. So getting back on topic here. So obviously, that decision is monumentous here. It's a good win for the firearm community, which, something that we all need. We don't get that many wins. So,
Mhm.
but it does seem like we've been stacking some wins lately, which has been fun. I'd like to see some of that continue on. What was that about last year? Texas passed legislation that basically said the ATF's tax stamp was null and void for Texas citizens to buy and sell suppressors in the state of Texas. I think that's pretty cool. You mix that with this decision.
You're talking about the one where Texas basically said you didn't need a tax stamp
Yeah, that was,
for.
yeah, it's good that we've been stacking a few wins going our way.
Mhm.
Excuse me. It's nice to see, us trending in a positive direction in the firearm industry. Is it's been loss after loss for so long. I mean, there's the other bill that got passed too. Or I don't know if it got passed. That's the bipartisan gun control bill. That was what did they have in there? The thing that I found troubling was they opened up funding for states to pass red flag laws.
Mm,
Which
I know that's like that right now is big in the office of the president,
yeah, I
and
know that's troubling to me.
big in the executive branch up there.
I mean,
I know the next bill you're talking about, yeah, the bipartisan law talking about enhanced background checks.
yeah, there's a
As
lot of
far as
good. There's a lot of good in there. I honestly don't know
Mhm.
why the red flag laws had to be included in that.
Mm.
Yeah, those expanded background checks with what is it? People between the ages of 18 to 21, their juvenile records are included.
Interesting.
I mean, I'm a big proponent of that.
Yep.
Speaking from myself, my own point of view as a man in my late 20s, I did a lot of maturing between the ages of 18 and 21.
Hmm. You see that I believe that bill includes raising the age too for semi-automatic rifles from 18 to 21.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that's how the state of Minnesota has it right now.
So, well,
Uh,
Minnesota right now is you can be 18 with a permit to purchase, uh, and
uh,
you can buy a semi-automatic rifle. You can't buy
is
handguns until you're 21.
is it is it 18? You can get I thought the permit to purchase, because you can buy handguns and semi-automatic rifles on a permit to purchase.
Yep, but so when you
Okay.
apply for your permit to purchase if you're 18, it'll only be that you'll still get the same card everybody else does, but it'll only be for rifles
Interesting.
or
I didn't know that caveat.
shotguns with the pistol grip.
Okay.
So,
Because
however, like in Minnesota is a little different, I think, where you do go through a background check. So
oh,
even if you're 18, 19 years old, you submit it to your police department. Your police department's going to
yep,
do a background check on you.
I didn't know about that
So,
little caveat for long guns for people. So people between the ages of 18 and 21 in the state of Minnesota, if they have a permit to purchase, can buy a tactical style rifle.
yep.
Uh, I'm not going to use their word to describe the AR-15s. You know, we don't use that. We don't use that term here. We prefer tactical style rifle or home defense rifle.
Yep, or a home defense shotgun. So,
Yes. Or
yep. So, yeah, in Minnesota, that's, I guess, our way of saying, hey, it's your right to bear arms, which in Minnesota, you don't need a permit to purchase for long guns. so bolt action sniper, like rifles, hunting rifles, basically, easier terms, and then
Yeah,
just your typical shotgun. Um, Obviously without the pistol grip, and you don't need to have that permit to purchase
yep,
for that.
yep. Yeah,
Which
those I would say conventional hunting rifles and shotguns. So
Yep.
daddy's bolt action 308. And actually, I think like you can get semi-automatic rifles like the Mini 14, which I mean, let's be honest, is just a less beautiful version of an AR-15.
Mhm.
um I don't know about that because there's certain features obviously that are kind of arbitrary.
Yep, yeah, it depends.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So I know, going back to kind of circling around back to like the New York's previous legislation as well as some other states. So one thing that I remember is this is how Minnesota can kind of regulate your Second Amendment rights, I guess, per se. Um, all those states were may issue states.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where like the big wording got is it's a may issue, which, now that it's out in the open, it was infringing on people's rights, whereas Minnesota's right to carry laws are shall issue.
Yeah.
However, don't read in between the lines. You have to qualify for it.
Well, absolutely.
So
You know,
as any logical person, I hope, would be thinking, when they want to get a firearm, like, do you qualify for it? So, um,
well,
but I will admit, I don't think you see too many felons in the news complaining that they don't have any rights to buy firearms, because we all know how they get those firearms anyway. So,
well, yeah, they get them from their friend who stole them, or they
yep,
steal them
yep.
themselves. They get them through
So,
straw purchases, which are already illegal.
hmm
Um, and they're not going into the gun store and filling out a 4473. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions there when we talk about how to purchase a firearm in the U.S. Um, the majority of firearms are purchased at a federally licensed dealer, which is just
hmm
about every person who sells guns. I don't exactly remember the number to be an FFL. I think it's 7 guns a year. Um, so anybody who's selling more than 7 guns a year has to register as an FFL. And anytime that they transfer a firearm, they have to fill out, or the buyer has to fill out a 4473 background check form. Uh,
hmm
and then that is submitted through the NICS instant background check system. There's the other misconception. It doesn't take weeks, months to run somebody's background. The background
Nope.
check is instantaneous now. We live in the golden age of technology.
Yep.
Uh,
For sure. Yeah.
there's a pseudoscience to waiting that makes it seem like something is occurring. I actually just recently, to get a little off topic, saw a little short on that. Like websites will have fake buffering times to make it seem like it's loading, like travel websites.
Hmm.
So it'll have a fake buffer, so it'll give you a little spin saying it's looking for deals when really it's found them instantly.
Hmm.
Same thing
Interesting.
same thing at like an ATM. I think when you deposit cash, it's instantaneous, but they have some sounds and things that make it sound like it's counting it, but it's instantaneous.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, a little old school Microsoft little wheel of, or the Apple wheel loading Apple, that's all irrelevant nowadays.
Yeah, for the most part,
Just
that's
with
in the
just with
past.
how advanced we are.
Yeah. So getting back on track here, you get your background check done near instantaneously for the most part. Occasionally it gets delayed because there's some issue. It's usually if you have an extremely common name, because then it has to filter out exactly who you are. Um, but lying on that form is illegal, and you can't buy it if you can't pass that background check. So
Hmm. Yep.
we're able to catch people who are trying to buy firearms illegally and they just lie on their form. Not that anybody would ever use illegal substances like crack cocaine and then buy a gun during that same time period, but
Mm-hmm.
we better not go there for fear of being stricken down by our overlords.
Yeah, I agree with that. So at that point, you're stepping on eggshells.
So I think we should jump back a little bit into the conversation on that bipartisan bill here. So I actually am really curious your thoughts. Obviously, red flag laws are a huge issue. You know, when people on one side of the aisle here specifically say nobody's coming for your guns, nobody's going to take your guns. There's no boogeyman going door to door to take your guns. Well, that's essentially what a
Mm-hmm.
red flag law is. They're looking us in the face and telling us that that we're not going to come take your guns as they try to pass legislation that allows them to do that. Now, obviously, it's not the politicians that are going to be at the front of the stack coming to get your guns. It's going to be police officers doing that. So I think that's a really, really interesting intersection for, you know, you as an officer. If an order came down as a red flag order, I mean, I guess where would you stand on that?
I'm not taking anybody's guns. So red flag laws. I will tell you, like, there are actually already some that are implemented.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not very. They're just not covered by really any media. So right now, so the way I'll give you my opinion on red flag laws here in a second. So right now, like what's implemented is the red flag laws, especially for law enforcement and families, so they can implement a petition to the court. So you have to go to the court and you have to petition there. You can't just go somewhere and say, hey, take their guns.
Yep.
There needs to be a petition in the court, and basically you need to bring your probable cause, basically proof or evidence that someone shouldn't have a firearm. And that's the way I look at it is that's maybe more for the mental health side of things.
Mm-hmm.
As far as you know there's different procedures. Obviously, if a criminal gets arrested for a firearm, well, that firearm gets taken away regardless. But it's more
Yep.
along the lines of those people who go through the background process. They are approved because there's nothing on their record that
Oh, yeah.
says otherwise. And so they purchase a firearm and say that maybe a year or two down the road, they're struggling with mental health, whether that be whether that runs in the family or just they went through a traumatic experience.
Onset
um,
depression, something like
yep,
that. Yep.
yep, stuff like that, or whatever. They had a tough time in their life, and that's if, and I say that's if their family or law enforcement rare ever never does. I've never heard of this being enacted for mental health, but I've never seen a family like say like, oh, we need to take his guns away. It never happens. They usually on like welfare checks, they'll let the officers know, hey, the guy's got firearms in the house, but and I'll run into a tangent on that too with these new laws coming out for law enforcement and mental health calls that also tie into the whole red flag law uh, and stuff like that. So getting back on topic, sorry, I'm running on tangents.
No, we're all good. We run a
So
loose ship here, Steve.
yep, yep. So yeah, if the courts ever come down saying like, hey, take away someone's guns from them because of this law, if you have like reason to believe that they're dangerous with it, I would not be enforcing that, because then yeah, you're trampling on people's rights to own a firearm. If I can just look at you and go, you shouldn't have a firearm, I'm going to take that, then that's a pretty big issue. But if it's as far as like mental health, and let's say the family's taking the time to go down to the court and petition that, and they are bringing good reason to the court, well, that's not me. That's not my burden to say yes or no. That's the court's burden to say that. Granted, if we got involved in that, I probably would if it's a mental health issue. That's a little different than just going and taking someone's gun for no reason.
Well, the problem with red flag laws are that that family or that family member or that law enforcement officer or that doctor or their neighbor, whoever that is, does go petition the court. They don't face very much in way of penalties if they're, say, fabricating. They face a perjury charge potentially. But
Yeah, I mean,
you don't
yeah,
have
contempt or
to,
perjury.
yeah, you don't have to, you don't have to have a grandiose story of somebody doing something dangerous with a gun. You can just, your probable cause come in and say, well, he's been acting erratic lately. Well, what's your definition of erratic? What's a judge's
Right.
definition of erratic?
Yep.
Um,
Well,
and
and
then
that, yep.
then that red flag law comes in and says that that person who's being petitioned against doesn't have a chance to represent them in court, themselves in the court, and their guns are taken immediately once that petition is authorized. And the problem that I and I think a lot of gun owners have on that is that there's a huge potential for abuse with that.
Right. Right. Yep. It's basically like you cry wolf, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. I if that were to happen, I don't believe that's like worst case scenario stuff. I don't know if that'll ever get passed, because the amount of, yeah, what you kind of said, like going to the courts and petitioning that, looking at it from a common sense perspective, like if I was a judge, and someone was like, oh, they're acting crazy every day, I probably would sit there and be like, that's not enough.
Well,
That's not enough to render any action against that.
well, I mean,
You gotta be,
we have.
you gotta be. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I'll let you get back on your point in a second. I just have something to put in on that. We have an instance at least once where a doctor petitioned. I think this was in New Jersey. He put in a red flag petition with the court because a patient of his or former patient of his kept leaving negative Yelp reviews and negative Google reviews on his practice.
Mm,
And so that to me sounds like a clear example of someone abusing the privilege of a red flag law.
yep. Yep.
And
And
a judge granted that.
mm, yeah, and that's where it becomes more subjective. Uh, it really comes down to, people like to argue that like the system was broken. Well, there was never a system in place in the first place to begin with. That's why no one knows what they're doing in life. And it goes for everybody. That's the way I look at it. People always say the system was broken. Well, I'll tell you a secret: the system was never made. If you look at the history of presidents, um, and this can go on into the next podcast, but and I'll get more detail on this in the future. But yeah, there's some past presidents that had the system that really would have made life a whole lot better, and it was never enacted, and that can be for another time. But I definitely understand what you're saying with people abusing it, and then, well, you're already telling me it's going on, right? It's probably being abused right now. So,
Yeah.
um, and that's where it gets interesting. If it goes like a state by state basis, New Jersey, yeah, they sound super one sided, so they might lean towards more stricter gun laws than say here or like North Dakota,
Mm-hmm.
um, or any other surrounding state in the Midwest. But um, I'll dive into my opinion here about red flag laws. So when one big thing that I was thinking of the other day, and this was me spitting ideas about, if they want stricter gun laws. However, it it shouldn't be changing gun laws, because those are should be constitutionally protected. Just the gun reform. You know, and that's right. Talk about that big umbrella, and then states kind of wiggle through uh, and figure it out, basically, per se.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so a good example, way in my earlier years when I was working as a community service officer, one of our duties was processing permit to purchase for Minnesota, their applications. So we would check it over, make sure all the information is correct. stamp it, and then we'd file it with the licensing tech who actually goes in and does the background check and everything for that.
Yeah.
I had one lady come in and she handed her application in, and everything looked fine, no mistakes on there. And then she all of a sudden told me, she's like, well, would I get disqualified? And I was like, well, what would make you disqualified on the application? And she goes, well, I've been seeing a therapist for mental health. I think she said regarding either like schizophrenia or something.
Hmm.
Uh, and she goes, well, I was never formally diagnosed. And I'm like, okay. So I was like, and I like to, I just kind of move the conversation along by finding the easiest exit out. And I said, well, if any, I'll submit it for you. And if anything pops up, the licensing tech will call you. Um, well, this lady continued to tell me that, she wasn't formally diagnosed, and uh, she wouldn't take my kind of easy escape answer and leave. So, I ended up calling the licensing tech down, and the person talked to her for a little bit and basically said it depends, because a lot of that stuff is HIPAA,
Yep.
and you can't look into the actual diagnosis or the actual notes from the doctor or whatever. Um, so just those people that have the mental health issues that want to get firearms, uh, my advice is probably go to your doctor and have a follow up with them, and see if they can sign something off, uh, allowing you to purchase firearms, or that that you're, I don't want to say all better, but um,
You have your condition managed.
yep, yep. So the way I look at red flag laws for that, and I'm looking at gun reform from more of a mental health perspective, because that's what
Well,
law enforcement is dealing with more and more, is mental health.
I think
Uh,
that's how everybody should look at
yep,
firearm issues. I think
yep.
there's two factors that lead to gun violence: mental health and socioeconomic standing. And I
Hmm.
think those are the drivers of gun violence, because you take away the guns, you still have the violence. You still have a
Right.
violence problem. Um,
Yep. So like one big thing too is when they want to flag um, these profiles. Well, my dumb idea was, you could, excuse me. Uh, so anyone who goes in for say a mental health checkup, and it wouldn't be like the first checkup, because you can't really, I don't know how doctors, I'm not a doctor, how they diagnose people and whatever. But say you go in for, you go into your psychiatrist or psychologist for mental health, and they, you know, maybe you get diagnosed, maybe you don't. I think that the psychologist should have communication with the patient, and advise them like, hey, based on your standing, we're gonna flag your account, um, pending review. So now let's say they try to go buy a firearm, they go through the background phase, and or they're in the background. So let's say they had their permit to purchase already,
mhm.
and they go to the gun store, and the gun store runs their background. Yeah, a little red flag would pop up, But however, that's where you get into HIPAA. It wouldn't tell them what it's for, because it couldn't. Uh, but that should just be the indicator to the firearms seller that, like, oh, hey, this person isn't eligible right now. They need to go, you know, seek out and fix that issue if they want to be able to purchase a firearm. Have a letter of all clear from the doctor, basically, is the way to put it. Um, that's my perspective on it and my opinion, how I think that's how it should be. But like I said, how you kind of said that, people could abuse that,
Mhm.
that's where it gets a little like, I don't know, I don't know yet, if it has happened, I don't know if it's happened here yet. It probably has. Um, but I don't know, because I haven't ran into any of those cases before.
Yeah, yeah, and I hope you never have to. Um, you know, I I think I would disagree with your point of getting a flag to pop up when they go to purchase a firearm and disqualifying them. I think maybe if you do have a patient who, and I believe the specific language on the 4473 is adjudicated mentally deficient or defunct or something to that
Yep.
effect. And I think that there should be a path to get back from that. And I don't think that
Yep.
it should be
Yep.
something that's done lightly. I mean, when you talk about, diagnosing mental health, it is seldom that mental health disorders are diagnosed with 100% accuracy.
Right.
I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
there's not a way to per se prove somebody has this condition, whereas with cancer or heart disease or any those type of illnesses or a broken bone, you can look at it and say, yes, that bone is broken, yes,
Yep.
there's a
Real,
cancerous
like,
growth there.
yep, real tangible results, something you
But
can see, you could touch, but
but
yeah, I definitely agree with
mental
you.
health is significantly different in that it's much
Mhm.
harder to get a physiological diagnosis. So at the end of the day, diagnosing somebody's mental health is an opinion. You could have multiple psychologists look at the same person and they will come up with a different diagnosis, or they could.
That's where it does get also very, like,
Well, it's
very
subjective.
opinion based. Yeah, opinion
Subjective.
based, because it'll be different with, yeah, like you said, one doctor to another, because one doctor could have seen this, and this in the patient and go, yep, he's got this. And then you go to another doctor who's only maybe seen this, and this, XYZ,
Mhm.
and these patients. So then they're like, oh yeah, that has to be this, it has to be that. And I I'm very opinion based as far as like doctors and if I'm really sick, I'll go into the clinic, but I really don't like going to
I
the
think
doctors
I think
because
you I think you, myself, and a lot of people in the self-reliant community, which I
yep,
like to describe many
yep,
firearm owners in that community as the
hmm,
self-reliant type. I think that we can agree that a trip to the doctor is something is severely wrong.
yep. Well, it's funny because, like you said, it's very subjective. It's very, the doctor's telling me something about myself that apparently I don't know what's wrong with my body. It's my body. I know what's wrong with it. You know, it's That's what I think is stupid. It's like they tell you something based off of something they read in a book that's been around for X amount of years. But I mean, I mean, yeah, I'll give it to the statistics and the evidence that it's proven reliable. However, I've lived in my body longer than this doctor's looked at my body. So it's like, listen, I get it. All I believe in that doctors do is look at you. They open their little signs and symptoms book and check boxes and go, oh, you must have this. Well, you're probably 80% right. However, like, I can function just fine. Um, so yeah, doctors and I don't get along, but I still respect what they do because they went through all that school. But
I thought
I still think
I
I know
thought
myself.
I thought it's firefighters you're not supposed to get along with.
That too.
Oh, well, I
Everybody
think
loves firefighters.
we have to get close to wrapping up here shortly. I want to touch on one more point, given some attention to our neighbors to the north. But before I do that, do you have any final points you want to bring up on either of the two pieces of or the piece of legislation and or the Supreme Court ruling? Again, the other Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah. No, honestly, I think it's just, reiterating. I think it's a great move as far as for like 2A owners and 2A supporters. I think it's great that, I truly believe someone should have the ability to protect themselves. I'm a big advocate in training though. So, I mean, if you're going to go out and be a firearm owner and and carry a firearm, I highly recommend getting some training done and then continue to train uh, because you can always get better.
Well, and shooting is a diminishing skill. If you're not using it, you're losing it.
Hmm. Hmm. And
Um,
even if it's you wake up in the morning and safely in a safe direction, practice some draws or practice
Dry
some gun
fire.
handling. And yep, I 100% recommend doing that.
I highly agree with that. I've seen some of like the trainers that are out there, and those things look pretty decent. I've thought about getting one myself. Obviously we don't have any sponsorships, so I'm not going to bring up any specific brands, but there's some pretty cool products on the market for that kind of stuff. And I think, yeah, you should absolutely be training with your firearm. You should be training in practical scenarios with your firearm. One thing I did the other day, I was in my garage, and I just happened to notice, in the event that I get in a shooting, I don't necessarily know, the angles around a car, how to blade myself and how to maneuver myself around a vehicle in a firefight. So I
Yeah.
just, cleared my firearm real quickly. I always like quadruple rack it before I do anything with it.
Yep. You never rack it enough.
Well, it's like the grill tongs. You got to click them. You got to click them to make sure they work, right?
Yep. Even
Um,
after you flip every burger.
Yep. And then I just walked around my car, with my firearm, just kind of checked the angles around it, where I felt I was, getting the most protection from it, because obviously a car doesn't offer a lot of protection. However, if
Engine
you can,
block, man. Engine
engine
block and the
block,
wheel wells.
engine block and the wheel wells. I found some good angles, angling myself off of the trunk with a diagonal. So basically the entire diagonal dimension of the vehicle was between me and
Yep.
whatever my threat was. And I think that kind of stuff helps a lot too. I think, safe firearm handling needs to always be promoted. And the more you handle your firearm, the safer you're going to be with it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And and honestly, you don't need to go to any fancy training course or, like you said, you practice in your garage. Like there's plenty of things on the internet
Oh yeah.
that offer free training or free targets to print out.
Yep. And
Yeah.
make sure you're not just doing static shooting either. Go to outdoor
Yep.
ranges where
Yep.
you can do some movement. So you can truly make yourself a better gunfighter, because if you do end up in a gunfight and all you've done is stand at a range and shoot, you're not going to be, there's a dynamic element to a gunfight.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up some of the more heavy stuff here. I just kind of have a little bit of a lighthearted aside to share about our neighbors to the north, the Canadians. For those of you who do not know, Sota Arms is based in Minnesota, so we are basically a better version of Canada. We have hockey, but we also have guns.
Yeah, we also have really nice gun laws.
So I'm just gonna play this clip here for you, Officer Steve. And then I have another clip to play after it. So here we go.
2 years ago, our government banned
There we go.
1,500 models of assault-style weapons, including the Ruger Mini-14 used at Polytechnique and the AR-15. We also expanded background checks to keep firearms out of the wrong hands. We did it because it was what responsible leadership required us to do. Last summer, during the campaign, some politicians said they would make assault-style weapons legal again. Not only did we stand up to them, but we promised to go even further to protect our communities. And so today, we're moving forward. We're introducing legislation to implement a national freeze on handgun ownership. What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada. As a further part of this new legislation, we're also fighting gun smuggling and trafficking by increasing maximum criminal penalties and providing more tools for law enforcement to investigate firearm crimes. And will require the permanent alteration of long gun magazines so they can never hold more than 5 rounds. These are actions that doctors, experts, and chiefs of police have been calling for years, and we're acting on their advice.
All right, so there's a little bit to unpack there. I think the first thing that we can unpack is, Canada passes laws making, AR-15s illegal.
Yep.
And clearly it didn't work, because now they're passing laws to make handguns illegal. I think it's clearly showing the face of the anti-firearm lobby. They're clear as day and white face today. Now here's another clip I would just like to play. Keep in mind what he said at the end there. So this is I believe, so he's a spokesperson for the Winnipeg Police.
The city councilor is calling for a national handgun ban. Could we just get your thoughts?
I can tell you that the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police have indicated that that won't make any difference. When we seize handguns, the handguns are always almost 100% in the possession of people who have no legal right to possess them. They're almost always stolen or illegally obtained. I simply don't see, as a 27-year veteran, how adding another layer of law will make any difference anywhere in this country. When we stop somebody in this city, and police do this every single day, and they have a handgun, somehow saying that this jurisdiction, that Winnipeg is handgun free, and I'll use air quotes, is going to make it safer or easy for us is just nonsense. It won't make any difference whatsoever. There are handguns all over, they're all illegal, and they're in the hands of criminals. And that the people that legitimately own them, they're in safes and being taken to gun clubs. The two sections don't intersect. So if someone owns a gun legitimately and it's stolen and it's brought into Winnipeg, somebody saying, well, it's illegal to have that gun in Winnipeg is just another layer of, and I guess it might make some people feel good, but it will not change the threat level one iota.
The city council.
So I think that's pretty funny. You know, you have a politician speaking for what the police chiefs are calling for, and then here's something to prove exactly the opposite. I guess what's your thoughts on that?
I honestly think that's probably the best response I've heard, and it came from another country. I don't think I've heard any response to gun legislation anywhere else as good as that one. It was just cut straight into the point.
Yeah,
Like, it doesn't matter the amount of laws you put in place, because you're only harming the law-abiding gun owners. Criminals can find guns however they want. Yeah, they steal them. They steal cars. They have people leave their. Now, if you're stupid and you're a law-abiding gun owner, yet you leave your car running to run into Chipotle, but you got your handgun in the glove compartment and your car gets stolen. Well, okay, whose fault is that?
I guarantee that gun's
know.
not getting recovered until after it's used in a crime at that point.
Yep, and that person will never get their gun back. So, and that's the majority of how criminals get guns. I guarantee you, if you want to go buy a gun in Minneapolis, you go to the nearest dark alley, and this is back in the 2000s. You see it in the movies. You find the caddy that pops the hood, and he's got a plethora of guns, that are scratched off serial numbers. There was a movie. I can't remember what movie it was, but he went into a gun store and he wanted to buy a gun. He couldn't buy a gun, and he walked outside, and there was a caddy at the end of the parking lot. Goes over there, asks to buy a gun. The dude pops the hood, and he's like, "What do you want?" So it's the chief is straight into the point of just the majority of guns that are found are on criminals, and they're stolen.
Yeah.
So it's just, gun legislation isn't going to do anything for the law-abiding gun owner, but put them in more danger of being more vulnerable. And who
Exactly.
knows? The way I see it is, the more and more legislation that gets put on law-abiding people, eventually they're going to crack. People can take only so much restriction or strict rules before people start getting tired of it.
Well, let's not mince words here. Let's call it what it is.
Yep.
People can only take so much bullshit legislation.
Yep.
The term common sense gun law, the term common sense, what common sense is, changes every single time that the anti-gun lobby wants to change something. It's common sense that we ban ARs. It's common sense that we ban handguns. They put it all under the guise of common sense, and I think the pro Second Amendment crowd is really waking up to this faux guise. you know, we all need to stand together and call it what it is, and say that, you know, shall not be infringed is pretty etched in stone and pretty clear to me.
Well, yeah, you know, like as far as when you do your oath of office, whether that's for the military or being a police officer, you know, you say you're going to protect the Constitution, you know, and then that's protecting people's rights. That's the
There
only
it is.
thing we that's the only thing as peace officers anywhere in the country. That's the only thing we can protect, truly protect, is people's rights.
People's constitutional rights. That's what it means when it says to protect and serve. The protect is protecting their constitutional rights.
Yep, yep. So
Well,
I could dive
Officer
into a whole
Steve,
rabbit hole with that.
I think possibly for the next episode or another future one, that could be an excellent topic to discuss. I, on behalf of Sota Arms and the people viewing this podcast after it's released here, would like to thank you for your time tonight, and look forward to our future conversations.
Yeah, thank you guys. And
All
thank you for
right.
having me.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Steve. Have a good rest of your day.
I
I'm
will.
just
You as
gonna
well.